Welcome to the Filmsteins, the double feature podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon. At patreon.com/Filmsteins, we offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level. For the $5 tier, we grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Filmsteins, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience.
They're an experience.
All around you. And welcome back to another episode of the Filmsteins. Thank you guys for joining us today. I am joined today by my messianic friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
You can join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for brand new episodes of the Filmsteins. Some recent episodes include Ferrari, Poor Things, our Academy Award predictions, if you care who won that $500, Richard Jewell, and All of Us Strangers. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins, and leave nice reviews on Apple Podcasts. Come subscribe to our Patreon for $1, $5, $1.50. Come request a movie, write in, join the discussion. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys so much.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we have a special episode. We will be covering Denis Villeneuve's 2021 Dune and the recent 2024 Dune Part 2. How about that? 2 for 1.
You're welcome.
And we're going to discuss this in such a way where we talk about it chronologically, for the most part. Because these two movies are basically one continuous item, right? So Dune 1 is not very good. It's boring. It comes without any kind of mysticism, fantasy, right? It's all orange and grandeur. We get shoddy performances and action sequences, right? We have a fucked up score, right? And we have a Timothée Chalamet who today in 2024 is very wonderful, but maybe at the time, and maybe partially due to Denis and writers, doesn't have a lot to work with. So I'm very low on the first part of Dune. But man, I'm very curious how you feel about Dune Part 1.
I agree with almost everything you said about Dune 1. I did feel like it was a little bit too slow. The first time I tried watching it, it was definitely boring. The second time watching it, I've definitely matured my movie watching skills that for some reason this movie wasn't boring anymore. But it also wasn't not boring. It felt like I had to pay a lot of attention to actually get what was going on, but that completely makes sense because of the source material. You have this fantastic, I'm sure I've never read Dune, but you have this fantastic science fiction book, and we all know how hard it is to replicate that onto film.
Of course.
Especially with how big that book is. I mean, that book I'm sure is marvelous, and I can't wait to read it one day. But I bet it has so much information about each character, each house, each planet. So I think they did a decent enough job here to explain to you at least everything you need to know to get what is going on in this universe. But I don't know if I could have managed that without being able to pause the film.
Yeah, I hear that.
I don't know if I appreciate what you said about the score, though.
I think the score is a train wreck in the first movie. All right.
I think it's supposed to be.
Spoiler alert, I think it is corrected big time in Dune Part 2. Okay?
It's like that type of score is only meant for the cinematic experience.
No, I get that. Just hear me out, though. It's really just these climactic, like, tribal screams, almost Lion King-esque. You know, when she goes, like that, okay?
That was good. That was good.
In the first movie, this will be my biggest point of comparison as far as the first movie. we get that climactic beat when what it feels like when Paul gets out of bed. When Paul finishes his dinner, right? When Paul makes that goal in the basketball hoop. It's just stupid ass stuff. And it corrects itself in the second one when Paul gets on the worm, or when he and his followers are walking up a sand dune or whatever. It's like there's this fantastic element that they embrace a little bit more in the second one. We will definitely get to that. But those moments of, cinematic grandeur through the score in the first one are so embarrassing as a designer, I mean.
You can't fault it, though, because there's not much going on in the first one. I mean, you said it so well when we ended the first film. You said, that was Act 1, wasn't it? And yes, that's like putting your big fancy score in Act 1, not during the, the climax or the rising action, even the falling action. You're putting it in your introduction, which you have to because there's not much here to go on.
We should have had a different tone or something as far as the score. There shouldn't have been this kind of monumental thing happening with Paul as the chosen one, right?
But we need to establish that.
Well, that's part of the fun thing throughout these first two movies is there's this uncertainty if Paul is or is not the chosen one, right? And in the first one, there's so little set up to Paul that I'm like, this kid's not even important. They literally tell me he's important, but he doesn't feel important. They had to tell me through the Bene Gesserit and the score, right? And his royalty being an Atreides. Like, okay, there's something happening here, but Paul's not giving me any of this. Denis giving me all of this.
Yes, but that's part of, I'm assuming, that's part of the book. Because when you have these, I can't think of any really at the top of my head besides Harry Potter. When you have these boys who are the chosen one through some prophecy, but still you don't know if they are the chosen one because not everyone believes in prophecies, and they're just kind of like fumbling, and it takes a while for them to get to they are the chosen one. They are whatever they are. But with Harry Potter, we still have these very magical moments, when he grabs the wand, or in the introduction where we just see a little tiny baby with a lightning bolt, and we have this really cinematically beautiful score pronounced a baby. It's almost like we're comparing it to that. It's almost like you should already know who Paul is.
And I appreciate that. But like Harry Potter and unlike Dune Part 1, where's the mystery? Where's the magic to help me wonder about what's happening in this world? Make me feel like Arrakis is a dangerous place, right? We get this sandworm moment. It's very cool cinematically. It's very cool visually. It's wonderful CG. It's beautiful. No one could ever take that away from Denis' vision. But they like to bring up how dangerous just the planet is itself, and I don't get a sense of that one bit in Part 1. And so all this kind of plays a role in the boring picture that Denis made here. Where is our edgy, kind of romantic Paul, right? We get him in the second one. They run right into each other. He's not really this brute in the first one, like brooding character, I mean. What does he say to Chani at the end? I'll love you to my last breath.
Yeah.
I want that edge in the first one. Where's that emo coming out? He's the same age, but we don't get anything out of Paul.
Because we're not supposed to get anything out of Paul yet. The spice unlocked something in him. Being in this world, being in Arrakis, unlocked these new feelings and this new destiny that he now has to face. And he's battling with that. Was it explained the best way? Not really. You just think he got, sand in his eyes and you're like, what's going on? But it's like you had to take time to think about where Paul is. And it's so sad because the first movie cannot stand alone whatsoever. Watching that first movie sucks. It sucks. You can't call that a good movie.
Does the second one help in retrospect?
The second one definitely helps the first movie. You have to watch them together. I absolutely recommend watching the first and second one together. Do you need to watch the first one to understand the second one?
No.
No. It'd be nice to get a little bit of context clues, but you don't need to. Especially as an experience and you just love watching movies, or just you love beautiful movies or movies that have cool CG, or you love sci-fi movies, you definitely don't need to watch the first one. So is that fair? Is that fair to call the first one a bad movie because the second one does exist? If it didn't exist, then yes, completely fair. But now we know that there's a part 2 and possibly a part 3. We don't know. Fingers crossed. I don't know. It's so hard because you have films like, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows, and then you have Breaking Dawn part 1 and part 2, and that last Hunger Games, that I don't know its name, part 1 and part 2. And those to me kind of feel like they could be standalone movies. Like, okay, in Harry Potter, okay, the bad guy doesn't get defeated, but you still enjoy part 1 very much like you enjoy part 2. And together they are this very beautiful thing.
It is ballsy having a part 1, part 2 right out of the gate.
Yes.
Establishing the situation we've got in our hands. You might find this funny. When we left Dune 2, I was thinking Dune 1 should have just been like a Star Wars crawl. Like the words going up the screen. That should have been Dune 1.
That's hilarious. Like, in a galaxy, blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
yeah.
But, like, just say, Paul Atreides, blah, 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 blah. That's hilarious.
That's about how much happened in the first one.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Nice little paragraph.
Yes.
And it can go the other way. Unlike Star Wars. It can go down.
I don't know. I still don't like you hating on the score. Although, I don't think you're hating on the score. You're just hating where the score got inserted into. Like a forced emotion out of everything Paul is doing.
Yeah, the climax of the score, really.
Yeah.
Because
there was one section where I was completely just awed by everything that was going on. And it was the scene where I think it was the Emperor's army. I'm still not, too confident in my names here. But I think it was the Emperor's army. And there was a priest kind of chanting and singing. And he was like, like, it was weird. And then there was like upside down humans bleeding into this pool. And then some like nuns looking things were like going around and almost like a Ash Wednesday, putting little crosses.
Was that with the Harkonnens?
Well, they were with the Emperor's army, and one of the Harkonnen dudes was there to recruit them. But yes, and that was really cool. That I really liked everything I saw there, visually and score wise.
Yeah, I kind of while watching the first one, I wanted just more of the Harkonnens. I wanted more of Daddy Skarsgård, Vladimir. And Batista's fine. I'm a big Batista fan, as some of our listeners might know. He's fine here. He's better than Jason Momoa, I'll tell you what.
Oh my god. Can't wait till we talk about that.
He's better than Josh Brolin. I'll say that too.
Is that the bodyguard?
I think that's like Leto's main bodyguard.
Yeah.
Or like the...
Gurney or whatever his name is? Okay.
But talking about these, part 1, part 2s of these storied franchise, right? We always get that part 1, part 2 towards the end. A lot of what is established, right? Especially in like Harry Potter. I think Harry Potter is a really good example because of how much wonder that world leaves you with. Like, I feel like Hunger Games, not so much. In Twilight, I can't say. But there's no doubt something really neat about the Harry Potter world. And I also get that in Harry Potter, it takes place on Earth, right? London, whatever, takes place in the blind spots of the Muggles and stuff. So there's this inherent kind of mystery in our world. And in Dune, we're going somewhere new, somewhere different. Every place is new in Dune. It's not Earth, right? It might as well not happen in our universe, right? It's 10,000 years out.
Right.
So it's maybe in some way a little more challenging to inject a little bit of mystery because you also have to establish the literal world. I get it. That's the challenge of sci-fi maybe in general.
Yes.
Or one of them. Because, we got characters, politics, potentially religion, planets.
Yeah, definitely religion with Paul. Yeah.
It's a lot. And unfortunately, I think it may be one of those things, kind of like you were saying, where sci-fi just struggles coming to the big screen in that way because there's just not a lot of flavor text. And of course, your imagination is always going to be a very powerful thing while reading. But one thing I think this movie should have really embraced, is the trippy, hallucinogenic psychosis thing to accentuate this world. It's very sterile, and I don't know, but I could have seen myself in a situation where I'm a little bit more sold on the first one if they just handed me a suitcase of mystery and just like, what the fuck is going on, instead of any real setup, because there's not really much setup here to begin with. So I think there was plenty of room to inject this world is bizarre.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you with some of the things you said there, because unlike Harry Potter and Twilight and maybe Hunger Games, those are more fantasy books than science fiction. And I completely agree. Science fiction is very hard to translate to the big screen. It's very difficult, and I mean, I even applaud people who try to do it because I wouldn't even know where to begin. And unlike a lot of science fiction that's out there, Dune is definitely a standout. In a good or bad way, I'm not sure. But we don't have any artificial intelligence. We don't have any monsters, aliens, that type of thing. Really, what just classifies this as a science fiction is that we have intergalactic travel and some sort of, I think you said it earlier, politics, religion, social debateness. And that's pretty much it. We don't have a lot of your other science fiction tropes that we typically have in a movie that help elevate movies, that help give you that mysteriousness or that creepiness. Here it's just, we're fighting over spice. It's like a very religious and political driven film, which I think is very different. And it's a very weird movie for me to categorize in my head. And I think that kind of explains why it looks the way it does, kind of more minimalistic and almost natural, but not really. It's like you said earlier, like, I don't know how many thousands of years later on when, we're over our consumer shit, but now we've gone back to something more religious based. I don't know. And that helps it kind of make sense in my head on why some of these characters, especially like what's she called, the Bene Gesserit lady, the main lady, why she looks like a chess piece. Almost this kind of regalness or royalty vibe that I'm getting from this film. Saying it like that, I don't know if I'd be okay with something so like trippy and hallucinogenic, but adding the spice into this makes it to where that would have been cool, but it almost maybe would have taken a whole different inspiration from the source material. Again, I can't speak to the source material.
I don't know, man, because in retrospect, after watching the second one, the Bene Gesserit seemed to be a little bit more transcended spiritually and just totally otherworldly anyways.
I don't know. She was just a nosy old lady that's getting into everyone's business.
But they can see the future. They have many voices happening at once. There's a lot of fun happening with them.
Yeah, it's almost like we forgot to include them in the first film and what they have. The only thing we get from them really is the voice.
And the voice is cool, I will say.
Cool. Yeah.
But they're just one of these many things that seems to beg for the mystery. We don't get anything out of the Bene Gesserit other than Paul's mom's motives and where her loyalties lie. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's fun. I'll admit, it's very fun. But they're sort of the main characters of the universe.
After watching the second film, yes, completely agree.
So I guess I kind of ultimately disagree with you in a way where I think the second film injures the first film because it exposes its...
almost like its lack of vision.
Yeah, and its resistance to make you wonder anything.
I see what you're saying.
You know, I want to... I mean, I haven't read the book. I'm not a fan of science fiction. I'm not a fan of fiction in general, really.
Because you're a sourpuss?
But I do want to want more out of the world, right? That's a good feeling to have with whatever. It gives you drive into immersion, and it's just good storytelling.
Yeah, but I think there was enough mystery here to keep you engaged, at least, with the Harkonnens and with the House of Harkonnens and that doctor betraying the House of Atreides. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? And then his visions. Yes, okay. Zendaya is beautiful, sure. When she turns around. All right, cool. But then we have the other visions with that guy at the end that he killed. I don't remember his name. And you're like, wait, what? Like, I thought he was going to help him. And then the vision he saw of Jason Momoa's character, it's like, wait, is he a traitor? Like, what is going on here? So I think there was enough mystery for me here, for sure. Until you get the second one, you're like, wow. Okay, yeah, what did you do? So you can't watch the first one without watching the second one. You just can't.
Zendaya really is his dream girl, isn't she?
Yeah. She sure is, literally.
The visions kind of suck. Like, they're fun in the moment, and then they're kind of explained away. You know, especially the Jason Momoa one. What's his name? Duncan. Duncan's hanging out with the Fremen, and you are kind of like, oh, that's a interesting image. What is he doing there? He's spying, whatever, trying to figure a way into, you know, kind of communicating with these people on their ground and trying to find peace and stuff. Okay. But then Duncan comes home and dies. It's just like, so, okay. Like, Duncan's obviously not important in any of this unless we're just going to have a Marvel thing where everyone just comes back all the time. So it seems. I'm not that familiar with Marvel, but... He's
probably a character in the book that's super important and we're supposed to feel super sad when he dies.
Then why'd you cast Jason Momoa?
But unfortunately, he wasn't portrayed like that.
No, he was a dork. All right. Jason Momoa is a goofball. I like him in Game of Thrones because he doesn't speak, you know, of any consequence, right? I'm just going to say that fight sequence where they're at, like, the Atreides capital and they're escaping or whatever, and he, like, jumps on some dude.
Oh, yes.
It's so bad.
That was bad.
That was the peak of bad choreographed, fighting. One of the worst I've ever seen in, like, a major, big-ass movie like this. That's obviously something that's corrected in the second part. Denis doesn't know how to capture fighting. It's very clear. And this might be a little conspiratorial, but I feel like the shield thing is almost Denis' way out to justify why the fighting looks bad, strange. It's because they need, they have this, like, second layer of something on them, and things can penetrate it, but some things can't under certain circumstances. And so it makes the fighting look bizarre, I think, just by nature, but it feels like it's an excuse because he didn't know how to capture fight sequences at all. He didn't know how to make them look cool, I guess. I don't know.
That was definitely very much improved in the second one, for sure. And I imagine it's hard when you have characters that are not fighters. They're not playing these characters who fight, like John Wick, Jackie Chan. They're not trained to do that. So it's probably already awkward for them. And then now you're throwing in this element that, okay, you're going to fight this guy, but now you have this suit that some objects may or may not penetrate depending on how hard they hit you. But they're not actually hitting you. So you don't know. So you're reacting. I don't know. I'm helping him justify it. But it did look bad. Especially that Jason Momoa jump. That was hilarious. I don't think I saw it the first time. But that second time we rewinded and played it back, it was so funny. I could have jumped better than that.
It's so bad. And I know there's instances, especially in the second one, I can't remember if there was any in the first one, where they play with gravity a little bit. They have these suits that can manipulate gravity around them. And I don't know if that's what was happening in that instant, but...
I don't think so.
Yeah, I
because you almost want to exaggerate something like that if you're playing with gravity. Like with Vladimir's character,
Yeah.
where he's floating up into the ceiling or whatever.
He's like, whoa, 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 hitting the ceiling. I was going to say earlier, every time we saw the Harkonnens, I was just like, man, this is way more interesting. These guys, why is he in a tub of tar, oil, whatever? Why is he naked?
Why are there dead ladies in the corner?
Yeah, why does he float?
Why does he float?
I was like, why is this man so tall? He's not tall. He just floats. What is Batista doing here? It's weird and very interesting. And you later find out in the second iteration, Dune Part 2, their whole thing is just aesthetic. They're kind of an inconsequential piece in this chess game, which is mildly unfortunate. But they were those little diamonds in the rough that I was mostly looking forward to in the first one. I was like, all right, when are we going to see Daddy Skarsgård again?
No, I definitely agree with you there. They were definitely some of the most interesting bits that you're like, what the fuck is going on? He looked weird as fuck. No one else in this world looked as weird as he did. Maybe the Bene Gesserit, but that was just her costume. She wasn't doing weird things per se. But Vladimir was, and he like you said, he was in a tub of oil. Okay, he was floating up after he got killed. Everyone else died except him. Like, what the fuck? Like, he's just such an interesting character. And we tend to do that with bad guys. You know, Voldemort looks weird as fuck. He's one of the most interesting characters because he knows the darkest of magic, and this motherfucker can't die. So we tend to do that with them, but, you know, we don't take any less from our beloved characters like Harry, Dobby, the rest of the crew. Lupin, I know he's one of your favorites. Hagrid. You know, we don't take any away from them. So where are these, you know, weirder, interesting characters in this world? Is it just him? Like, we haven't explored enough of the world yet. Okay.
What's his dad all about? What's Paul's dad all about? He's the head of House Atreides, right? But he feels like a simp. He feels like when the tough gets going, he's not going to be able to respond. But he's the head of one of the great houses. I'm not sure where Atreides sits exactly in that. But they're being called upon to be eliminated, so they're a threat, right? That's not just because of Paul, I would imagine. I would imagine it has something to do with their weaponry. Well,
it has to do with Lady Jessica, though, right?
I would imagine in part. Imagine there's...
Because she's the one that's supposed to give birth to the whatever Messiah dude. I don't know what they called them. They had different names for him, so...
Which is cool.
Yeah.
Helps build this religious idea that starts to transcend time and space, literally.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, some of the world building here was a bit of a miss. But again, I don't know what I'm missing out. Besides with Vladimir's character, I don't know what I'm missing out. But you would think with so many houses and so many worlds, so much intergalactical travel, we would at least run into different looking people. But we're mostly stationed in Arrakis. So it doesn't give us much besides blue eyes on the Fremen.
Is that caused by the spice?
I don't know. Did they say that?
No, but it seemed like it, because at times it seemed like some didn't have blue eyes and sometimes they did. So I'm not really sure.
I did enjoy some of the other world building things, though. I really like the sandworm. That was cool as fuck. I like that in the second film we got a little bit more of its evolution and kind of all the things this worm can offer to this world, like weaponry and poison and travel, transportation,
Transcendence.
It's so cool.
Yes. Why didn't we not get things like that adjacent to that? Not necessarily the worm, but things like that in the first one. You don't have a 2.5 hour setup movie.
Well, nothing like this has been done before either. He played the risk game with this. He really did. Let's see if this works. Because I saw someone say that this, instead of doing a part 1 or part 2, this should have been a miniseries. Like I've said so many times, haven't read the book. So I don't know if there's enough for a miniseries or if season 1 and 2 would be what Dune is now, which that sounds awful. And then it picks up season 3, 4, and 5 to 8, probably. I don't know. With the part 3 that's hopefully going to come out. I don't know if I see this being a show quite like I can see something like Aragon and obviously Game of Thrones. Huge, like that was the very best call anyone could have done with that series.
Yeah, can you imagine a Game of Thrones set of movies?
No. That sounds like it would suck.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the show thing would have been the right route either. It may have been the lesser of two evils, I guess, kind of thing where, all right, the intro, the setup to this big-ass story is, no matter how you cut it, something you need to grin and bear. But, man, I just can't get away from injecting that magic to the world in some way or another. We don't need the hallucinogenic stuff necessarily. We do, I think, within Paul and the Bene Gesserit. I like the physicality of the world. I really do. And it's especially accentuated in the second one. There's no AI, like you said. That's fun. There's no, like, space travel. There's no ships, really. There's no artsy-fartsy weaponry, right?
Yeah. Although some of the tech was cool, like the helicopters that represented, what'd you say, what bug?
I think the design was inspired by Dragonfly, but I can't remember where the sound of the flapping comes from.
Oh, no, I was just saying visually. Yeah, they look like dragonflies. That's cool. Everything is so simple, though, and I liked it. Especially that little mechanism that thumps to attract the sandworms.
And the spice harvester is just this big-ass tortoise-like thing that's just right in the ground, right? And they have to pick it up when the worm is coming. It's cool. The physicality is very, very cool. And how big, of course, everyone says it. It's been beaten to death. The physicality and monumental visuals are awesome.
Very beautiful, yes.
Dune 2 will obviously win its visual effects Oscar, in 2025. If it doesn't, that'd be pretty crazy.
But we know that about him.
Of course, Blade Runner.
Arrival.
We've gotten this at him. He's a master at directing the visual vision.
Which is nice. For a science fiction movie, it's very nice.
It's the hardest part a lot of times, I think.
Because making a science fiction movie look good, visually stunning, is hard. I mean, Blade Runner 4957, blah, 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 looks amazing.
And then look at Ender's Game.
And that
got praised on its visuals.
No.
That movie looks like trash.
No. One thing I did not like about this movie that definitely got a lot better in the second one, if it was even in the second one, was the humor that it tried to do. Yeah, they made some really dumb jokes throughout the movie. Not too bad. It wasn't like a Marvel movie that you're just like, ugh.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. There were maybe 2 or 3, but they were obvious because of the tone of the movie. Especially there was one joke that Gurney said about having to shower and scrubbing your ass with sand. I don't know. I didn't get it. And stuff like that, I assume, is from the books. Someone tried to make a joke and maybe Denis found it hilarious and put it in here, and he has all the power to do that. But they just didn't sit well with me, and I'm glad that wasn't a problem in the second film at all. If there were any jokes like that, I definitely didn't notice them. They were very more passable. I want to mention one scene that was a bit of a standout because it was really weird, and I think both of us noticed it too, was the scene where Lady Jessica is picking out one of her maids when they came to Arrakis, and she pulls out that weapon made out of the sandworm, and she asks her, "Do you know what this is?" And then as Lady Jessica was about to say something, I think she was saying like a maker, and then she was about to say the word of, that lady starts screaming. Like the weirdest scream. Like this was the weirdest thing in the movie, and nothing quite stayed like that. Maybe the Harkonnens had some weirdness to them, but not quite like this. So that was weird, and we didn't stick with that. We didn't stick with that kind of weirdness. It was very odd.
I know the movie's begging to be a little stranger and have that magic. It really is. It's begging for it. And we get a little bit of it in the second one. That scene was super bizarre relative to the rest of the film.
Right. I'm not mad at it.
Did that scene also have that Lion King howl?
I don't know. I don't know if it did. But something tells me it did when she pulled out the weapon. Just saying.
All right, man. Well, thank you for watching that first movie with me. All right.
You're welcome.
I just want to be clear that I don't think it's a bad movie. Okay. I just don't think it's very good. And something, maybe it's the cynical side of me, I'm not sure.
Probably.
Something tells me that the love for that first one, because it is loved, comes from a lot of like the imagery that's kind of applied to everybody's imagination and stuff, and how big it is and beautiful. I mean, it just is. And then when you have the collective kind of grasping on that, dogpiling on that, it validates something that's very straight arrowed and doesn't take any risks.
Which, I'm not gonna lie, as someone who read a lot of fiction books as a kid and saw their favorite books being adapted into film, that's all you can ask for. For something so visually stunning and what looks like to be sticking true to its source material. Because no one wants to see another Aragon like that, or another Ender's Game like that.
It's true.
So I don't know. There's something to say there, I think. Especially if this was your favorite book as a kid. Like, it was his, apparently.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool that he got to work on this.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's obviously some love that went into it.
Clearly.
Yes.
The storytelling element's just a little...
It's a little off, but it also could be really hard for him to put something visually out there for someone who hasn't read the book.
I get that, and I've heard that David Lynch's Dune is a little bit more visually psychotic and really flavorful. And that may or may not have been part of the reason it was not very favored. So, but yeah, man, we're going to transition now over to Dune Part 2. All right? And I'm very happy to, because like I was saying at the very beginning of this episode, Dune Part 2 corrects a lot of itself. In almost every way, I had a problem with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very good movie. I will say off the top of this part of the episode that Dune Part 2 is severely overrated.
What do you mean?
We'll talk about the Letterboxd score here in a little bit.
Okay. Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, it's craziness. But I'm going to give you one guess to who the star of Part 2 is. Who is it? Actor or character name?
I mean, definitely Austin Butler. No?
Wrong. Stilgar. Javier Bardem.
Oh, I mean, yes, he's for sure second. He would for sure be my second guess.
Austin Butler also very good. Javier Bardem is in one of the greatest movies ever made, of course, No Country for Old Men. But he's usually in kind of nonsense films. I don't know what is about that. That's, he does him. But this Javier Bardem might be my favorite second film of his. I love his fanaticism. I love the development and just total explosion of that towards the end of the movie. I love that whole angle with Stilgar. But yeah, man, how did you feel about Dune Part 2?
I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I love that we saw this at the movie theater. That was awesome. The score is definitely made for this type of experience. Because you feel that lady doing her vocals.
Her Lion King vocals.
In your vibrations, yes.
At good moments.
Okay, whatever. I'm just saying overall, you hear them here and they just travel through your body. It was so awesome. Man, if you can see this at the movie theater, see this at the movie theater. The only part there is it's long. I don't know how long it was. Maybe 2.5 hours?
It's 2 hours and 45 minutes.
And everyone knows at the movie theater, you have to get there a little bit early if you want a good seat, if you want to get, the popcorns, if you want to watch the trailers. So you're pretty much there for like 3 hours. And then if your dumb ass is sitting there waiting for like after credits, you're there for a while, you know? So it's rough watching a long movie at the movie theater. I started to get antsy, but it was very, very late, very, very towards the end. I mean, I think we had like 10 minutes left, which is awesome because when we went to see Batman, I think we were 30 minutes in and I was already feeling antsy, and it was a horrendous experience for me. I think with Avatar, the most recent Avatar,
Way of the Water.
Way of the Water, thank you. Maybe about halfway I started feeling antsy. So if that doesn't tell you, Oppenheimer, I didn't feel antsy at all. So if that doesn't tell you the quality of movie, for me, like just innately my body's like, all right.
That's funny.
But I thought this was a good movie. It was very badass compared to the first one, especially. We had a lot more interesting characters and some, beloved characters that have been on the rise for sure. So that was very interesting. I know you said the first one felt almost like a first act. Did this feel like a second act? Or did this actually feel like a proper movie to you?
It felt like Act 2 and 3.
Okay.
Completing the movie. And I was just wondering, I said, of course, that I wish that first movie just was a crawl at the beginning of this one. Maybe we make this movie over 3 hours and add 45 minutes of the first movie, and we just have that big-ass movie here. I don't know if that would have been wise, but this did mostly complete something in my mind, right? I wish we could have gotten Austin Butler's character maybe hinted in the first movie or something in some way. Maybe we did. I'm just an idiot. Just to kind of help elevate his whole presence and death a little more. But Austin Butler did such an excellent job. They captured him in such an excellent way that it was still very good. Austin Butler was very great.
And no, that's very true. You say that, and I agree. I would have liked him to at least been hinted at. Maybe we're both dumb and we both didn't catch it. Because he was also supposed to be one of the prophesized chosen ones.
Okay.
So it was either him or the girl, or I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but he was also somebody that could have been the chosen one.
Which I love.
Yes.
That there's not this definite thing that we're trying to manipulate nature into this condensed, transcended being.
Yes, which, again, it's a Harry Potter day today, but Harry Potter wasn't the only chosen one. Neville could have been the chosen one too. So I like that I can draw kind of comparisons to that, even though Neville and Austin Butler's character here are nothing alike. One's a scary ass motherfucker and one's a nerd. He's Neville, So I really like that. So hinting would have been awesome. It would have made his death sadder. It would have made his death even more honorable in a way.
More significant, because what if he still was the chosen one,
Mm-hmm.
It's just because he dies, like the Emperor, people said that when the perceived chosen one dies, it only makes their faith stronger, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So some kind of emphasis on that would have been very neat.
Yes.
What do you think of Christopher Walken, the Emperor, and Florence Pugh's character interference more? I thought it was actually probably the weaker part of the film. We get this weird stoicness out of them. There's no flavor. There's no flavor to where they are, except in their dress.
Well, I don't think we're meant to have that flavor to them yet. I think that they're going to be a huge part of part 3, that it was not necessary to do that to them yet. But I like them. I thought they were at least a nice addition to see who the Emperor is, to see that there's more to just Paul and, these 2 houses pretty much. I don't know if the Bene Gesserit are a house. There's more than just these 3 houses. There's an Emperor, and we get to meet him, and we know he's the one behind having Paul's dad be murdered. So I do like that they were introduced here, at least.
I like placing the face with the actions, of course, because it's revealed that they are at the core of organizing the genocide, really, of Atreides, the family, right? I don't know what I would have wanted more out of them, but I can only give it probably the best compliment in that it made me want more. Unlike in the first one where they didn't let my mind wander at all.
Yeah, there's definitely some mystery to them here, for sure. That makes you want to see them in the next movie. It makes you at least care about what's going to happen next.
And I get the feeling that Florence Pugh's character is up to something.
She's always up to something. She plays characters that are always up to something. So I wonder if there's something here to that. She's a up to something girl.
Yeah, she is.
And we know this movie looked amazing. We know this movie had an amazing score. It was visually stunning. So we know that was something he definitely brought to the first one and definitely did a
even better job.
Yes. He
Here.
did a better job here, for sure. I don't know if that was because there's a lot more going on or because we're actually out in the sand with Paul and him trying to become a Fremen and all that.
It didn't feel as dusty. It felt a little more clear and like saturated, maybe. The first film felt a little more
gloomy
and, and sandy and like foggy.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It felt more clear here. But sometimes I just blame that on where I'm watching it.
That's fair.
I did like that we had a lot more things explained here. We had a lot more lore, like I said, with the sandworms and just kind of all the properties that they bring to Arrakis and all their uses. I mean, that was such a cool scene when that lady lured him out of the sand and basically drowned that poor baby sandworm to extract some poison that's gonna unlock some knowledge of the future of the universe. Like, what?
It's
what
awesome.
The fuck? That was
How did
awesome.
they get that sandworm in that little sand pool?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
How did, because, okay, you're going to attract it with rhythmic beatings. How did a giant one not come out from under there?
They finally start to make this world feel lived in. It's breathing. It's occupied, right? There's not, what did Duncan say? 100,000 people or 100,000 Fremen. There's actually like tens of millions of them.
Yeah.
It starts to build this world out.
Yes, it does such a great job. It does such a phenomenal job at world building. This is what I wanted to see from the first one, really. And just a little bit curious on how the book itself is laid out. That'd be interesting too. I know when I tried to read the Game of Thrones series, that first book, that first chapter was very hard for me to get through because it was very, very descriptive on the visuals. Super descriptive. Like, okay, I can visualize a gorgeous tree, move on. But no, he wants you in there. And even with Aragon, there's a lot of travel. There's a lot of travel by foot. So that was hard for me to get through as well. Like, where are my action scenes? So I also wonder how this book is laid out too. Is the first chapter, the first maybe 10 chapters, I don't know where it splits off, or the series, or what, if there is a series. I don't know pretty much anything about the books except that they exist, or it exists. So I'm very curious if that's how it was, and that's how maybe boring it was to read. But it must be displayed like that on the screen to a point. Because then here we have all these action scenes, which were awesome. They were so awesome. Like you said, the fighting got better. Everything got clearer. The tech was cool as fuck. Austin Butler's character was amazing, and everything with them and the Harkonnens was awesome.
Yeah, I love their worship of water and how they don't let anything go to waste.
Yeah.
Even when people die, they put them in these suits that sucks their moisture out of them. It's awesome.
But that one's sacred. That one was sacred. Which, you know, as hardcore they are about, like, don't cry or you're gonna waste your water, it almost would seem like, thank you, friend, for leaving me some water behind. But alright, you know, I guess we all have our limits.
It's the fanaticism and evangelist kind of nature of some of these folks, and it's really neat.
Yes.
I love this complete focus of the Fremen rivaling each other, even, especially when it comes to Paul, on what is and isn't like constitutional to them.
Right.
And I'll say, when the Harkonnen were shooting down their mountain where their sacred pool was at, I was like, dang.
I was sad too. I was sad too. Not gonna lie, I was sad towards the end. A lot of it, even some reunions of people that they hadn't seen. I got some emotion stuck in my throat.
That's awesome. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, when Gurney shows back up, they have that beautiful moment and everything. I'm just like, he's one of these dregs of the first one. Which, to be fair, we don't get anything of him, really.
Yeah.
He basically takes a step back. Gurney's there to now serve Paul.
Yeah, I like that too. There was a lot of things I liked here. There were a lot of scenes I liked. Way too many scenes I liked. But I guess there might be two standout scenes. The first one is when Paul rides Grandpa Sandworm. That was awesome. Or I guess that whole sequence there was awesome. From everyone being like, all right, dude, you're gonna die. It was nice knowing you, basically, to him being tested and awkwardly finding a way to manage this, to then finding out that this was the biggest of the daddies of the sandworms.
It's awesome.
And it was so cool. It was so cool. And then I love that he showed us not only how he mounted him, but how he dismounted the sandworm. It was all so cool. Because these little things are, especially if you're a huge fan, these little things are things you think about. Like, how did he get on that? How did that happen? But here we were actually shown something, which I was a little bit thoughtful about, because in a lot of movies, I feel like this is where you would throw in your montage of Paul learning to ride a sandworm and learning to fight and learning to bear the desert and survive,
And we get it here in a like trial kind of way. I was just thinking, why are they trying to kill Paul constantly? Everything's like, you could die. But we don't get it in that fast montage way, which I really appreciate. A lesser filmmaker would have made that a 2-minute montage.
Yes, and I very much appreciate it. I appreciate all that hard work that went into this. I saw in an interview where Denis very briefly says that scene took them about 4 months to film.
Jesus. It pays off.
It pays off.
Because even before that, when the grandpa worm is moving about in the sand from far away, a lot of the Fremen start standing up.
Yes.
And they're like, because they know, and there's like this like, oh shit moment, because people who haven't read the book, aren't totally on the same page. But there's this sense of worry. Like, oh shit, what's going on here? It's awesome.
And talking about that, I really, really, really love that we didn't know that they were rideable. And in the first movie, we had that girl, and she took out her little like nunchuck looking picks to grab onto the sandworm, but we didn't know that then. And we're just like, what the fuck was she doing? Was she gonna kill him? What, like, just a layer of confusion. And just this very tiny idea in my head was like, no way was she going to get on it, right? Like, that's weird. I didn't think ride it at any point, that whatever, but I thought maybe just wait for it, get killed. I don't know. A lot was going through my mind. And in the second film, you see it. And then you see Javier Bardem's character riding it and wave at
Paul. Like he's surfing.
Yes! It was so cool. That whole revelation of them being used as transportation was so fucking awesome to see.
Yeah, it really showed you the power they have over the desert, how much control they have over their lifestyle.
And then Paul asked if he could learn, and Chani's basically like, no, you have to be a Fremen. And he's like, oh, he's so sad, but then he gets to do it. And I was so excited for him.
My favorite part about the whole riding the worm thing was I guess towards the later half of the movie, when they managed to put large groups of people on the backs of these worms. Just like, how did they get up there like that? It's awesome.
If you were going to show us how Paul did this shit, you could have at least like hinted on how a group of people does this.
I know. I was like, why is this the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life?
Know.
They're all right.
That was so good. And then my second favorite scene, sequence, whatever, was when Chani and Paul were shooting down one of those helicopter looking thingies, and they were playing with the shadows and being hidden by the other piece of machinery. And it was such a very beautiful, almost romantic scene, and just so kind of badass. It was so cool. And I love that when they finally shot him down, you see them both running, and Chani's like just cheering and kind of whooping and stuff, and it was good. That one made me actually smile outwardly.
Yeah, that whole section was great. I like how they hide in the sand to ambush these things.
Yes.
I'm just like, that's crazy.
That's awesome. There was a lot of fun in this film. A lot of fun that wasn't even hinted at in the first one.
This is the polar opposite as far as the fun factor.
Yes, for sure.
The first movie is not fun. I like this echo of this little mouse thing that keeps popping up, too. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. I think Paul was named after it.
Yeah.
But I like this echo of this little critter in it, because it just shows this love for where the Fremen are at. You know, this is their home. They know everything about it. They know how to control it. I like how they know about, like, worm territories and, you know, where they can't freely just... Yeah. Stab the sand with the thumper.
Yes.
It's very cool.
It is very cool. It's very well thought out. It's very well executed. I have no complaints, at least for the world building and the excitement and the fun this film had. I was confused on some of the story elements that I wish I would have had time to maybe pause and think about kind of what was going on, especially with Anya Taylor-Joy's character and her as a baby and maybe her significance to this. But again, she might be like the Emperor and Florence Pugh's character that will definitely expand on whatever I didn't understand in the third film.
Sure. I assume that's going to be a central part of the movies moving forward, is Anya Taylor-Joy's significance. I took that as, so Paul's mom took the water of life, right, to become a reverend mother.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know she was pregnant, which is hilarious. Straight up. It's funny because Paul knew. I guess that just shows you the power of his transcended mind.
Yeah.
But this other reverend mother didn't right away. I was a little like, that's okay, whatever. She's not that powerful, you know, because it's only been, a few weeks since maybe Paul even knew. So she's like maybe a month pregnant or something, because his mom was like, how do you know that? Like, I don't even really know that for sure.
But that was in the first...
Yeah, but they take place over just several weeks, right? It's, I guess kind of hard to tell as far as like time goes.
I guess she's still pregnant and she's really big towards the end, so at least maybe like 8 months.
Oh, that's fair, yeah. But she takes the water and she's like, the current Reverend Mother's like, oh shit, she's pregnant. So I take this as, this is maybe a big no-no because the baby is now going to harness the power of the Reverend Mother Bene Gesserit without the control of all the other stacked Bene Gesserits.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's what's happening here. In my head, I like this. And so now this thing in her belly can transcend time and space on some level and is now able to talk to whoever she wants, probably. But talking to Paul because he's significant. She's going to be significant. And I don't know the end game of her thing. I couldn't possibly know that, but I like that dynamic that seems to be building right there. I don't know if that clears anything up for you, but that makes me very interested in the future of Dune, actually. Just that alone.
No, for sure. There's a lot to unpack there with the future of Dune.
Yeah, man. With all that said, though, thank you for watching this movie with me. Thank you for talking about these 2 movies here today.
You're welcome.
There is a significant improvement. I can't believe that happened, actually. I figured it would have been more of the same. But do you have a budget guess for me here today for these two movies? Dune 1, how much did it cost?
100 million.
It's an expensive movie, obviously.
Yeah, it is not below 100 million.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know the future of Dune 2, I wasn't sure if that was maybe impacted by the budget, so...
It definitely was. It seems like these guys who can make these movies back to back save a little bit of money in the long run, which is, always good. But this movie cost $165 million.
Holy crap.
Very expensive movie. And it went on to make $434.8 million. Good. So, not amazing.
That sounds amazing to me. I mean, compared to what you spent, okay. But that's still amazing numbers for the show, like for people showing up to watch this, for the support of this.
And it was released during COVID, so I wonder if the back end of the movie market kind of helped inflate that.
That's true.
A little bit. All right, what about Dune 2?
Well, my original guess was 150, but I hadn't looked up what Dune 1 was, so I just guessed these back to back. But if the first one was 165, I am not confident at all with my 150 million guess. I guess I'd bump that to 175.
Apparently it was 190 million.
Oh my god!
And so far it's gone on to make 369 million. What is that, 2.5 weeks on the market?
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's on track to do pretty good.
Okay. Well, go watch this so we can get a Dune Part 3, because now I'm very curious.
Well, over on Letterboxd with 2.42 million people.
Holy
almost
shit.
2.5 million. They weighed in at 3.9 for Dune Part 1.
I gave it a 3.5.
Dune Part 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Obviously, you did not.
No, I gave it a 2.
Okay. I can tell.
And so far with 846,000, almost a million already. For Dune Part 2, they gave it a 4.5.
Wow. That's a lot of people, and that's a high score.
That number is not budging much.
I gave it a 4, but that was also almost like a high.
Of course.
Of watching it at the movie theater. It's such a beautiful movie to experience at the movie theater. So, I don't know, it might come down depending on what else pops up this year.
I totally hear that. That's one of the so-called shortcomings of trying to analyze, criticize a film from the theater, because it's a powerful thing sometimes.
Yes.
So
if I give this anything lower than a 4, Dune 1 definitely has to come down. So
of course.
They'll both get readjusted.
I'm bouncing between a 3 and a 3.5. Dune Part 2.
Oh my god. Okay.
What?
You obviously liked it.
Like I said, it's a significantly much more competent film from every angle. Can't just rely on visuals, Denis. He knows that.
He knows that. He made Prisoners, okay? He knows that.
And Arrival. And Blade Runner, I guess.
Well, Prisoners wasn't a beautiful masterpiece and intense like some of his others.
Sure, yeah, that's a good point.
So he's capable of that.
It's nothing but hardcore, character-driven storytelling.
Yes.
There's nothing visually crazy about it.
Yes.
It's a beautiful film, no doubt. Shout out, to Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman. All right, man. Thank you for that talk, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmistines. Remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday over on patreon.com/Filmistines, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Pandora. Remember to leave nice reviews over on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Come subscribe. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys so much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon, at patreon.com/Filmistines, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmistines, signing off.